Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being with us for another midweek reflection. So, for the next 3 weeks before we get into our summer, we're going to be going over the topic of fear. And it's something that I think all of us understand to a certain degree. At least for me, when I think about fear, the first thought that comes to mind is heights. Because for me, I am terrified of heights, which might be kind of strange because I'm in the Air Force and you would think, wow, an Air Force person is scared of heights. That's me. So, yeah, I get really, really nervous when I'm in a high place. Anyways, I know that for all of us, we all have fears, whether they be big fears or small fears, we all have them. The fears that I want to talk about, though, are not the fears where we are like physically afraid of something, but it's the kind of fears that maybe that don't show up in ways that um, are evident or are clear. So, like someone else, when they think about fear or think about our fear, they don't necessarily see it. It's something that's more deeper. It's something that's maybe a part of our pain, a part of our past, a part of us that we may not necessarily understand altogether very well. But I wanted to talk about that kind of fear because that's the kind of fear that, in a lot of ways, drives the ways and the things that we do. Um, but before we get into it, I wanted to read a passage. And it's a passage that does talk about fears, especially with the disciples and how Jesus responded to those fears. It comes from Matthew chapter 8, verses 23 to 27. And it says, "And when he got into the boat, his disciples followed him. A windstorm arose on the sea, so great that the boat was being swamped by the waves. But he was asleep. And they went and woke him, saying, 'Lord, save us, we are perishing.' And he said to them, 'Why are you afraid, you of little faith?' Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a dead calm. They were amazed, saying, 'What sort of man is this, that even the winds and the sea obey him?'" This is a passage that I've read many times over. Maybe some of you have read it many times as well. But for whatever reason, when I was reading it this time, something struck me. And the thing that struck me more than anything else was how the disciples went to Jesus and asked, "Lord, save us, we are perishing." And I guess the reason why it kind of struck me was because when you think about it, the disciples didn't know at the time that Jesus would be doing exactly what he did. I mean, for us, we know this passage. We know that Jesus is going to calm the sea. He's going to calm the winds. But for the disciples in that moment, they had no idea what was going to happen. From their point of view, they were going to die. And so when they went to Jesus and they were yelling, "Lord, save us, we are perishing," I don't think they were going into it with an idea of Jesus being the one who would calm the winds, who would be the one to calm the sea. They were going to Jesus, yelling at Jesus because he was asleep. And I think for us, whenever we talk about fears, we don't know how to respond to it because of the pains, because of the frustrations, or because of the things that are in our lives that inhibit us from living out in a way that is faithful. I think in those moments we go to Jesus, not necessarily because we believe that Jesus will help us or change the situation, but we go to Jesus because we're asking, "Why are you asleep? How can you not do anything in this moment when we are so afraid?" And I think a lot of times we go to Jesus in that way. And honestly, that's completely natural. The way that we come to Christ, the way that we come to Jesus isn't always in a way of faith and saying, "I know what it is and I have it all together." A lot of times we go to Jesus with all the shambles of our lives, all the things that are broken. And we're asking Jesus, why is it like this? Why is it like this? I want to tell you a story about a guy that I know. And I'm going to change some of the details of this story simply because I have no permission yet to tell this story. And the story of this person is that he lived a life in a way that was filled with people telling him that he's not doing this correctly, he doesn't do things well. And because of that, right now, whenever he lives his life, he lives it always in a state of wondering, what do I have to do in order for that other person to look at me and not blame me for something? And so when he lives his life, he's always living in this state of fear, always wondering, okay, what do I have to do in order to make this person think better of me? Or how do I make this other person know that I'm not doing something wrong? And this constant state of fear. These are the stories that we all carry within us as well. Not only this person, but also us. We all carry these hurts and these pains. And a lot of times when we come to Christ, we're not coming to Christ to calm those storms, but we're coming to Christ because we want Christ to wake up and do something about it. The question that I want to ask you is the same question that Jesus asked the disciples. Why are you afraid? Why are you afraid? And I think it's a question that we need to ask ourselves because it's good to, at the very least, be truthful about the things that we are feeling afraid of. And I think that's the first step. So as we go through this series, I hope that we can start thinking through the things that maybe we need to bring before God. And it may not be bringing before God saying, I know you're going to be able to take care of it, and there may be a lack of faith in that, but it's just at least coming before God honestly and saying, God, this thing is broken. So let's come together and share, maybe not in detail, but share in the ways that you can, the ways that you can come before God and ask, God, will you take care of this? Thanks. We'll see you again next week. Good night.